I built a $10 million empire. After my family's ultimate betrayal, they have 24 hours to leave me alone before I reveal everything. The look on my mother's face when she defended my brother, even after learning he'd impregnated my wife, still haunts me. Not because it was shocking, but because it was so familiar. The same expression she'd worn my entire life when choosing him over me. The slight tilt of her chin, the narrowing of her eyes, the way her lips pressed together before she spoke the words that would shatter what little remained of my heart. Daniel was always meant for greater things, Nathan. You've known that since you were children. For 28 years, I had been the family disappointment while Daniel was worshipped. The golden son whose mediocrity was celebrated while my achievements collected dust in the corners of our family history. When I graduated with honours in computer science, my parents attended only because Daniel's basketball game was conveniently scheduled nearby. When I landed my first tech job, my father asked if I could finally stop playing with computers and join the family business, the same business they were grooming Daniel to inherit, despite his complete lack of business acumen or work ethic. I accepted this reality as immutable, like gravity or the changing of seasons. I built my life around it, constructed defenses against it, and eventually found happiness, despite it, when I met Eliza. She was brilliant, with a sharp wit and an infectious laugh that made the weight of my family's disappointment feel lighter. When she agreed to marry me 4 years ago, I thought I'd finally escaped my role as the family failure. How wrong I was. The betrayal unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. First came the late nights at the office for both Daniel and Eliza, who worked at the same financial firm. Then the secretive phone calls, the unexplained absences, the sudden trips. I ignored the signs because the alternative was too painful to consider, that the only person who had ever truly seen me was looking elsewhere, and worse, looking at the one person who had everything I'd ever been denied. The truth exploded on a rainy Tuesday evening when I came home early from a business trip to surprise Eliza with anniversary plans. Instead, I found them together in our bed, with my brother wearing the watch I'd given him for being my best man at our wedding. It just happened, Daniel had the audacity to say, as if 3 months of deception could be condensed into a moment of weakness. Eliza at least had the decency to look ashamed, though her shame didn't stop her from following him out the door 2 weeks later, or from calling me 3 months after that to tell me she was pregnant with his child. I thought nothing could be worse than that phone call until I drove to my parents' house, seeking some small measure of comfort or support. Instead, I found Daniel already there, seated at the kitchen table where I'd eaten countless silent meals under my father's disapproving gaze. My mother stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder, that gesture of solidarity she'd never once offered me. "We need to discuss this as a family," my father said, not bothering to look up from his newspaper. "Daniel has made a mistake, but we don't need this becoming public knowledge. The business could suffer." "A mistake?" I echoed, my voice hollow even to my own ears. "He slept with my wife. She's pregnant with his child. And you're worried about the business?" "These things happen," my mother said, with that infamous head tilt. "Daniel was always meant for greater things, Nathan. You've known that since you were children." In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity that I had never been part of this family. Not really. I was an outsider they tolerated, a burden they endured. The realization should have crushed me, but instead something hardened inside my chest. Something cold and calculating and entirely new. I walked out without another word, drove to my empty apartment, and began plotting my escape from their gravitational pull. The months following the betrayal were the darkest of my life. Eliza filed for divorce, demanding an exorbitant settlement despite being the one who had shattered our marriage. My parents' lawyer, who had drawn up our prenuptial agreement, mysteriously discovered irregularities that made it partially unenforceable. I lost our house, most of our savings, and any remaining illusions about fairness or justice. Daniel, meanwhile, was showered with support. My parents hired the best attorney money could buy to ensure he wouldn't have to pay excessive child support. They threw a lavish baby shower where family friends cooed over ultrasound pictures of my replacement, the grandchild that would inherit everything I never would. I was not invited. When I confronted my father about using our family lawyer against me, his response was characteristically dismissive. Business is business, Nuss. Daniel needs protection. He has a future to think about. The final betrayal came when I discovered they had leveraged the family business, the one I had never been allowed to participate in, as collateral for Daniel's new venture. A tech startup remarkably similar to the one I had proposed to my father 3 years earlier and been laughed out of his office for suggesting. Depression consumed me. I stopped sleeping, barely ate, and watched as my remaining savings dwindled while I struggled to find work in a suddenly hostile job market. Every reference check mysteriously resulted in rejection. Every promising lead evaporated at the final stage. It took me weeks to realize my father was poisoning the well, ensuring I would have no choice but to come crawling back, begging for scraps from the family table. I didn't crawl back. Instead, I recorded every conversation, saved every email, documented every interference. Not with any specific plan, simply because data was the only thing I trusted anymore. The truth, cold and unfiltered. My apartment was repossessed after 6 months of unemployment. I slept in my car for 3 weeks before a former college roommate offered his couch temporarily. The crushing debt of the divorce settlement and mounting credit card bills left me with exactly 2 options: bankruptcy or innovation. I chose innovation. Using my friend's Wi-Fi and a 5-year-old laptop, I coded 18 hours a day, building a security software platform that could identify and prevent the exact kind of corporate espionage my father's company had suffered from multiple times over the years. The irony that I was solving a problem for a business that had systematically excluded me wasn't lost on me, but desperation breeds strange motivations. After 4 months of non-stop work, I had a functioning prototype and exactly $43.27 to my name. The local coffee shop owner, who had witnessed my daily struggle from the same corner table, introduced me to her brother, a venture capitalist looking for early-stage investments. He didn't fund me, but he connected me with someone who did. A $250,000 seed investment became my lifeline, enabling me to rent a tiny office space, hire 2 junior developers, and finally move from my friend's couch to a studio apartment the size of my former walk-in closet. I named the company Phoenix Security, not just for the mythical bird that rises from ashes, but because the startup that had stolen my concept and launched with my brother at the helm was called Griffin Technologies. If they could take inspiration from mythology, so could I. For 3 years, I worked without a single day off. Every setback became fuel, every obstacle a challenge to overcome. The recordings I'd made of my family's betrayal became my late-night motivation when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me. I would play them through my headphones while coding until 3 a.m., letting the pain transform into precision and determination. Phoenix Security grew steadily, securing contracts with mid-sized companies first, then larger corporations, as our reputation for effectiveness spread. My small team expanded to 15, then 30, then 50 employees. We moved to larger offices twice. I took no salary for the first 18 months, living on instant noodles and determination. When Griffin Technologies launched their flagship product, the one based on my concept, I analyzed it, identified 17 security vulnerabilities, and anonymously reported them through proper channels. The resulting product recall and security patches cost them millions and delayed their market penetration by 8 crucial months, enough time for Phoenix to establish dominance in 3 key sectors. I never mentioned our connection to anyone. This wasn't about revenge. It was about building something that would ensure I never needed my family again. Then came the opportunity that changed everything. A major international corporation suffered a devastating data breach that cost them billions in market value and customer trust. Their CEO reached out personally, asking if Phoenix Security could not only repair the damage, but implement systems to prevent future attacks. We delivered beyond their expectations, and their public praise of our company sent our valuation soaring. Overnight, industry leaders were contacting us for contracts, and venture capital firms were offering 8-figure investments for minimal equity. 3 years and 4 months after the day my mother defended my brother for impregnating my wife, I sat across from the CEO of America's largest cybersecurity conglomerate as he slid a purchase offer across the table. $86 million for Phoenix Security, with a 5-year contract for me to remain as division president at an annual salary of $1.2 million plus performance bonuses. I negotiated them up to $94 million and signed the papers on what would have been my 5th wedding anniversary. After taxes, payouts to early investors, and bonuses to the employees who had believed in my vision, I walked away with just over $10 million and a corner office in a Manhattan skyscraper. The family failure had built an empire from nothing but determination and the cruel words that had fueled his darkest nights. I purchased a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, bought 3 bespoke suits, and a watch worth more than my first car. Not because I needed these things, but because I needed to see myself differently in the mirror each morning. Not as the broken man sleeping in his Honda Civic, but as someone who had conquered his circumstances. For the first time in my life, I was completely free of my family's influence and expectations. I had done what they always said I couldn't, built something valuable, something respected, something entirely my own. I thought I had finally escaped them forever. I was wrong. Yesterday, they showed up at my office unannounced. My assistant interrupted a board meeting to inform me that my parents and brother were in the lobby, insisting on seeing me about an urgent family matter. My first instinct was to have security remove them, but curiosity won out. What could possibly be so important that they would risk public humiliation by appearing uninvited? I excused myself from the meeting and took the elevator down to the lobby, where I found 3 ghosts from my past life. My father, once imposing and immaculate in his tailored suits, wore an off-the-rack blazer that hung awkwardly from his now thin frame. My mother's carefully maintained appearance had given way to visible stress lines and grey roots. And Daniel, golden child Daniel, stood slightly hunched, the confident swagger replaced by a nervous fidget. "Nathan," my father said, stepping forward with his hand extended as if the last 4 years had been a minor disagreement. I kept my hands in my pockets. "This is unexpected." "We wouldn't have come if it wasn't important," my mother added, her eyes darting around the lobby as if assessing the value of everything in sight. "I'm in a meeting," I said flatly. "Whatever this is, it'll have to wait." "It can't wait," Daniel interjected, a note of desperation in his voice I'd never heard before. "We're about to lose everything." Despite myself, I was intrigued. "Everything?" My father cleared his throat. "The business is failing. We've leveraged everything to keep it afloat, but we're facing bankruptcy by the end of the month. The house is in foreclosure. Daniel's wife left him and took their son." "Ex-wife," I corrected automatically. "What?" my father asked. "Eliza is my ex-wife who left me for Daniel. Proper terminology matters." My mother stepped forward, reaching for my arm. but stopping when I flinched away. "Nathan, please, we need help. We have nowhere else to go." The irony was almost too perfect. The family that had discarded me when I needed them most now stood before me, begging for salvation. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant even. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Nothing. No satisfaction, no rage, no hurt. Just a vast emptiness where my pain had lived for so long. "What exactly do you want from me?" I asked, though I already knew. "A loan," my father said, his pride visibly crumbling with each word. "Just until we can stabilize the business. 3 million would cover the immediate debts and give us time to restructure." 3 million, I repeated slowly. "You want me to give you $3 million. Loan," Daniel corrected quickly. "A loan will repay with interest." I laughed then, a sound so foreign in their presence that they all took a small step back. "With what? The failing business you just told me about? The house in foreclosure?" "We're family," my mother whispered, tears welling in her eyes. That single word, family, ignited something in me that burned through the emptiness. Not rage, but clarity. Perfect, crystalline clarity about what needed to happen next. "Come to my apartment tonight at 8 p.m., I said, pulling a business card from my wallet and writing my address on the back. "We'll discuss terms then." Relief flooded their faces, so profound it was almost comical. They genuinely believed I was going to save them, just like that. No questions asked, no accountability required. "Thank you, son," my father said, reaching for my shoulder. I stepped back. "This isn't a yes. It's a conversation. And I'm not your son, not in any way that matters." Their expressions fell, but they nodded in desperate agreement. I returned to my meeting without looking back, already formulating what would happen next. That evening, I prepared meticulously for their arrival. I set out financial documents detailing exactly how their business had failed due to mismanagement and Daniel's incompetence. I arranged photographs of myself during my homeless period, pictures I'd taken as documentation of how far I'd fallen before rising again. And most importantly, I queued up the recordings. Hours of conversations captured over the years, my mother mocking my ambitions while praising Daniel's mediocrity, my father discussing how to manipulate me out of my inheritance, Daniel laughing about sleeping with my wife, describing intimate details to his friends, the family lawyer explaining how they could break my prenuptial agreement through legal loopholes. Every betrayal, every dismissal, every cruel word, all preserved in perfect digital clarity. They arrived precisely at 8 p.m., desperation making them punctual for perhaps the first time in their lives. I welcomed them into my penthouse with cold politeness, noting how their eyes widened at the view, the art, the obvious wealth that surrounded them. "Drink?" I offered, pouring myself a scotch without waiting for their response. "Nathan," my father began, accepting the glass I handed him, "we can't tell you how much this means." "I haven't agreed to anything yet," I interrupted. "Please sit." They perched awkwardly on my leather sofa, looking like visitors from another planet. In many ways, they were ambassadors from a past life I no longer inhabited. "Before we discuss any financial arrangement," I said, taking a seat across from them, "I need to understand exactly what happened, how the mighty family business collapsed so spectacularly." My father launched into a predictable narrative of economic downturns, changing markets, and unfortunate timing. No mention of Daniel's mismanagement or the millions they'd invested in his failed startup. No acknowledgement of their systemic destruction of the company my grandfather had built through actual hard work. When he finished, I nodded thoughtfully and pressed a button on my tablet. My mother's voice filled the room. "Daniel needs that money more than the business does right now. Nathan never has to know about his trust fund. Besides, He'd just waste it on one of his computer schemes. My father's voice responded, "We'll transfer it through the offshore account. If he ever asks, we'll say the market crashed." I pressed stop. The silence that followed was absolute. "That was from 6 years ago," I said calmly. "The trust fund my grandfather left me that mysteriously disappeared in a bad investment. $300,000 that funded Daniel's first failed business venture." "Nathan," my father started, his face ashen, "that recording is out of context." I pressed play again, this time featuring Daniel's voice. "She's pregnant, Dad. But don't worry, I've got Nathan's lawyer convinced the prenup has flaws. He'll destroy his own client's case from the inside. Nathan won't get a dime." Another press of the button. "No one in the industry will hire him once we're done. I've called in every favor. He'll come crawling back, and we'll let him work in the mailroom if he's lucky." With each recording, their faces crumpled further, the reality of their situation becoming clear. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a reckoning. "I have hundreds of hours of these," I said, setting down my tablet. "Every scheme, every cruel comment, every time you chose Daniel over me, every effort to destroy my career when I needed help most. All documented, all time-stamped, all admissible in court." "You've been recording us for years?" my mother whispered, horrified. "Initially for my own sanity, to remind myself I wasn't crazy when you gaslit me. Later, as insurance. I never planned to use them unless you forced my hand." I leaned forward. "Which brings us to tonight." My father straightened, attempting to regain control of the situation. "What do you want? To humiliate us? To watch us suffer?" "If that were true, these recordings would already be public," I replied. "No. What I want is simple. I want you to disappear from my life, permanently. No calls, no visits, no reaching out through intermediaries. I want the same thing you've always wanted, to pretend I don't exist." "And if we agree?" Daniel asked, speaking for the first time since their arrival. "Then these recordings remain private. Your reputations in the community, whatever remains of them, stay intact." "And the loan?" my father pressed. "The business? Our home?" I smiled without warmth. "There is no loan. There never was going to be a loan. This meeting was to establish terms for your exit from my life." The color drained from their faces as understanding dawned. They hadn't come to negotiate. They'd walked into an ambush. "You would let your own family become homeless?" my mother asked, tears streaming down her face. "After everything we've done for you?" I laughed again, that same unfamiliar sound. "After everything you've done to me, you mean? And yes, I would. Just as you watched me sleep in my car without offering a couch. Just as you blacklisted me from an entire industry without remorse. Just as you celebrated the man who stole my wife while I pieced my life back together alone." I stood, signaling the end of our meeting. "You have 24 hours to decide. Disappear from my life forever, or these recordings go public. To your friends, your country club, your business associates, and the district attorney who might be very interested in the financial fraud documented in several of these files." 24 hours isn't enough time to make arrangements," my father protested weakly. "You had 28 years to treat me like family," I replied. 24 hours is generous by comparison." They left in stunned silence, the gravity of their situation finally sinking in. As the door closed behind them, I poured another scotch and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, they were frantically discussing options they didn't have, escapes that didn't exist. For the first time in my life, I held all the power they never thought I'd have. The clock was ticking, and for once, I wasn't the one racing against time. Sleep eluded me that night. I paced my penthouse, replaying the evening's confrontation and questioning my motives. Was this justice or vengeance? Closure or cruelty? The line between the two had blurred somewhere during those 3 years of relentless work building Phoenix security. By morning, doubts had crept in. Not about my family's worthiness of forgiveness, they had demonstrated repeatedly they were incapable of change, but about what executing this plan would do to me. Would releasing those recordings make me more like them? Would watching them suffer complete financial ruin bring me peace? Or just perpetuate the cycle of pain they had started? I was contemplating these questions over coffee when my phone rang with an unknown number. Hello? Nathan. It was Eliza. My breath caught at the sound of her voice, still familiar despite the years. I heard what happened last night. Did Daniel send you to plead his case? I asked, surprised by my own calm. No, she replied softly. He doesn't know I'm calling. I thought you should know the whole truth before you make your decision, which is, your family is worse than you know. She took a deep breath. The reason Daniel's startup failed wasn't just mismanagement. He embezzled most of the investment money to fund a gambling addiction he's had for years. Your parents covered it up because they couldn't bear their golden child facing consequences. The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, yet somehow it did. How do you know this? Because I caught him transferring money from our son's college fund to pay a debt. That's why I left. Her voice cracked slightly. Nathan, I know I'm the last person who should ask anything of you, but our son... He's not my son, I interrupted, an old pain flaring briefly. No, but he's an innocent child who will suffer if your parents lose everything. They've been supporting us since I left Daniel. Without that help... I closed my eyes, processing this new information. What are you asking me to do, Eliza? I don't know, she admitted. Maybe nothing. I just thought you should have all the facts before you decide. After she hung up, I sat motionless, staring into my coffee cup as if it might contain answers. The child, Jake, I recalled dimly, was indeed innocent in all this. Yet helping my family meant potentially enabling Daniel's destructive behavior and tacitly condoning years of cruelty. At precisely 8 p.m., exactly 24 hours after our meeting had begun, my intercom buzzed. They had returned for my verdict. I let them up, watching dispassionately as they filed into my apartment. They looked even more haggard than yesterday, as if they'd aged years in a single day. Have you made your decision? I asked, gesturing for them to sit. Before you tell us, my mother said quickly, we need to show you something. She placed a worn leather book on my coffee table. I recognized it immediately, my grandfather's journal. What is this supposed to be? I asked, not touching it. The truth, my father said simply. Your grandfather's final entries before he died. He knew what we were planning with your trust fund. He anticipated it. Skeptical but curious, I opened the journal to the bookmarked page and began reading. My grandfather's familiar handwriting filled the pages with observations about my father's character flaws, Daniel's entitlement, and most surprisingly, his faith in me. Nathan has the same spark I had at his age, he wrote. The same determination my son lacks, and my grandson has been denied by excessive coddling. They will try to take his inheritance, I am certain of it. Let them. The true inheritance is not money, but character. And in this, Nathan is already wealthier than they will ever be. I looked up, confused. Why show me this now? Because we've lost everything that matters, my father said quietly. Not just money or status, but family, real family. A concept you've only discovered now that you need something from me, I observed coldly. Yes, he admitted, surprising me with his honesty. It took losing everything to see what we had done, not just to you, but to Daniel as well. We created this disaster through years of favoritism and poor choices. Nathan, my mother leaned forward, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. We don't deserve your help. We know that. But we're asking anyway, not for a handout, but for a chance to make amends. Real amends. I laughed bitterly. And how exactly would that work? I write a check and suddenly we're one big happy family? No, Daniel spoke up, looking more humble than I'd ever seen him. We work for it, for you, at Phoenix, or whatever you want. Entry-level positions, minimum wage. We earn back every penny while trying to rebuild what we destroyed. The suggestion was so unexpected, I momentarily lost my composure. You want to work for me? We want to work for anyone who will hire us, my father clarified. But yes, ideally for you, because you're the only one who truly understands what must be repaid. I studied their faces, searching for the manipulation, the hidden agenda. To my surprise, I found only desperation and an unfamiliar humility. And if I refuse? I asked. Then we accept whatever consequences come, my mother said. The recordings, the public humiliation, all of it. We've earned it. I stood and walked to the windows considering their offer. Working for me would indeed be a fitting punishment, the ultimate role reversal. The family that had dismissed my abilities would report directly to me, dependent on my assessment of their value. Yet something about the scenario felt hollow. A victory too easily won, a revenge too neatly packaged. No, I said finally, turning to face them. Their expressions fell, bracing for the worst. I won't hire you, I continued, not because you don't deserve the humiliation, but because I don't need you in my daily life. I've built something valuable without your help or approval, and I won't taint it with our dysfunctional history. Then the recordings, my father began, will remain private, I interrupted, on one condition. Anything, they said in near unison. I sat across from them again. I'll provide enough money to clear the immediate debts and prevent foreclosure. 1 million, not 3. The business is beyond saving. Let it go. In exchange, you will attend family counseling with a therapist of my choosing, who will report to me about your progress. Counseling? Daniel echoed, confused. Yes, because money isn't the problem here. You are. All of you. The dysfunctional dynamic you created destroyed 2 marriages and nearly ruined 3 lives. I won't fund your continued self-destruction. My father looked like he might object to this characterization but thought better of it. And if we agree to counseling? Then I'll help establish a trust for Jake's education and future needs. Not controlled by any of you, but properly managed by a trustee. Additionally, I'll connect you with my network to find appropriate employment. Not at Phoenix, but somewhere your skills can be useful. Why would you do this? My mother asked, genuine confusion in her voice. After everything we've done? I considered the question carefully. Not for you. For me. Because carrying this anger has taken enough of my energy, and I'm ready to set it down. And perhaps for Jake, who deserves better than the patterns we've established. They exchanged glances, silently communicating in that familial shorthand I had never been part of. We accept, my father said finally. All conditions. One more thing, I added. I'm not looking for a relationship with any of you. This isn't forgiveness or reconciliation. It's a business transaction with clear deliverables and consequences. Break the terms, and those recordings still exist. Understood, my father nodded, looking older than I'd ever seen him. After they left with preliminary paperwork in hand, I returned to my window view of the city. The confrontation I had anticipated for years had ended not with explosive catharsis, but with a negotiated settlement. It felt anticlimactic, yet somehow right. My phone buzzed with a text from Eliza. Daniel told me what happened. Thank you for Jake's sake. I didn't respond. Some bridges remain burned by design. 3 days later, my family attended their first counseling session. The therapist reported they were resistant but participating. 2 weeks after that, my father found work at a small manufacturing company, a significant step down from CEO, but honest work with advancement potential. Daniel enrolled in a treatment program for his gambling addiction. My mother volunteered at a community centre, her first job in 40 years. The recordings remain secure in my cloud storage, digital insurance against future betrayals. I didn't need to release them. Their existence was power enough. As for me, I continued building my empire, now unburdened by the weight of anticipated revenge. The $10 million was just the beginning. My team at Phoenix was developing new security protocols that would revolutionize the industry again. Sometimes at night, I still recall my mother's expression when she chose Daniel over me that final time. But now, the memory comes without the familiar sting of rejection. It's merely a reminder of how far I've come, not just financially, but emotionally. The family disappointment who built an empire from nothing but determination and the cruel words that had fueled his darkest nights. The ultimate revenge wasn't exposing their cruelty to the world, but transcending it so completely that their opinion became irrelevant. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need anything from them at all. And that freedom was worth more than $10 million could ever buy.